There's something about a man with boundaries that makes a woman pause. Not because he's playing games, but because he knows himself. High-value women don't want a man who bends at every smile. They want the man who walks in silent command. In a world full of men desperate to be chosen, be the man who chooses himself first. These 6 boundaries aren't tricks, they're power. And when you live by them, attraction is no longer effort, it becomes magnetism. First boundary, no tolerance for disrespect ever. When a man holds 0 tolerance for disrespect, he communicates something far more powerful than any pickup line or polished appearance ever could. He sends a message that he is not a man who can be moved, molded, or manipulated. He doesn't entertain disrespect, not because he's heartless or arrogant, but because he understands one fundamental truth. The moment you allow someone to treat you beneath your standard, you become complicit in your own disrespect. And that's where most men go wrong. They think patience means enduring mistreatment. They think understanding means tolerating chaos. But a high-value man knows better. He draws a hard line between compassion and compromise. And once that line is crossed, he does not explain. He exits. Not in a rage, not with drama, but with quiet, dignified detachment. Because that's how respect is earned. Not by reacting, but by removing. Disrespect doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it shows up in silence. In the way she ignores your words, dismisses your values, mocks your passions, or belittles your ambition. Sometimes it's subtle. A sarcastic tone, a delayed reply, a shift in energy that dares you to beg for clarity. And here's the truth most men don't want to admit. The moment you start rationalizing those signs, you start losing ground. When you explain away poor behavior as just her mood, or believe that being a man means absorbing emotional blows without boundary, you give her the blueprint to keep violating your standards. And trust me, once you teach someone that your peace is optional, they'll treat it like a doormat. That's why a man with self-respect doesn't tolerate even the smallest form of disrespect. Not because he's fragile, but because he knows the cost of allowing disrespect once. It never shows up just once. A woman of substance pays close attention to how a man handles disrespect. Not because she wants to disrespect him, but because she wants to know if he's capable of enforcing self-respect. If a man is easily manipulated by attention, sex, or emotional swings, then he's not leading with strength. He's reacting from need. And a high-value woman isn't drawn to a man who needs her more than he needs his self-worth. She's drawn to the man who can look her in the eye and say, "I'd love to share my world with you, but never at the expense of myself." That kind of energy is rare. That kind of energy doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't chase. It doesn't threaten. It simply moves on. And nothing triggers respect in a woman faster than a man who doesn't flinch when he's tested. The boundary of 0 tolerance is not about being cold. It's about being clear. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You simply observe patterns. And when those patterns speak of disrespect, be it inconsistency, manipulation, or passive aggression, you remove your presence. That's the language high-value women understand. They don't fall for empty promises or forced validation. They are drawn to men who don't ask to be respected. They demand it by walking away the second it's missing. Second boundary. Emotional discipline is not just a desirable trait. It is a non-negotiable boundary for any man who aspires to attract a woman of true value. It's not about suppressing feelings or pretending to be emotionless. It's about mastering your internal world so that no external force, no drama, no manipulation, no emotional outburst can shake your foundation. High-value women are not impressed by a man who reacts to every trigger. They are drawn to the one who remains centered when others lose control, who speaks with intention instead of impulse, who watches before he responds. That level of restraint, that grounded masculine presence, creates a sense of trust and respect that no superficial charm can replace. Because let's be real, any man can be composed when everything is going his way. But the man who stays emotionally clear under pressure, that's the man who commands attention without needing to ask for it. Most men lose their edge, not because they lack ambition, but because they let their emotions dominate their decisions. They over-explain, over-pursue, and overreact to things that don't even require their energy. They beg for closure, chase after validation, and spiral into emotional confusion every time a woman pulls away, delays a reply, or tests their boundaries. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those reactions don't come from strength. They come from insecurity. And a high-value woman can feel that. She can feel when your mood is dependent on her behavior. She can sense when you need her to be okay so you can feel okay. That's not attractive. That's emotional dependence. A man who cannot hold his frame under pressure is not ready for a woman who operates with depth. She doesn't want to mother you. She wants to respect you. And respect only comes when she sees that you are in full control of yourself, regardless of what she says or does. A man with emotional discipline doesn't get baited into unnecessary arguments. He doesn't take everything personally. He doesn't fall for guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments, or emotional roller coasters disguised as just being honest. He observes, he listens, he filters, and then he decides if it's even worth a response. His peace is not up for grabs. His mood doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's unpredictability. He lives from his core, not his wounds. And that kind of man doesn't need to yell to be heard. His energy speaks louder than any words ever could. Emotional discipline isn't about silence. It's about sovereignty. When a woman senses that you don't need her approval to remain stable, that you're not moved by the highs or lows she brings into the dynamic, she begins to look at you differently. Not as someone to test, but as someone to trust. Not as someone she can control, but as someone she must respect. Your ability to manage your emotions under pressure sets the tone for every interaction. It determines how far someone can push you, how easily you can be manipulated, and whether you're leading the dynamic or being led by it. Emotional discipline is what separates the reactive man from the grounded man. And the grounded man is the one who always stands out in a world full of noise. Third boundary. Time is earned, not given freely. Time is one of the few things a man can never get back, and yet too many men throw it around like it's disposable. They offer it up too quickly, too easily, hoping that by being available, by showing up on demand, they'll be seen as valuable. But high-value women don't respond to men who are always accessible. They respond to men who are selective, intentional, and protective of their time. When you give your time freely to anyone who asks, you're not being generous, you're being careless. And a woman who truly respects herself will never admire a man who doesn't respect his own hours. She may smile, she may accept the attention, but deep down, she's already categorized you as just another man seeking significance through constant availability. The man who understands his worth doesn't offer time as bait. He offers it as a reward for alignment. A man who guards his time sends a different message. He's not cold. He's not playing hard to get. He's simply occupied. Occupied with his growth, his purpose, his discipline. He doesn't cancel plans with himself for temporary excitement. He doesn't rearrange priorities to accommodate inconsistent energy. His time is not something you stumble into. It's something you earn through consistency, through mutual effort, through the value you bring to his life. That's what makes his presence magnetic. He's not begging for company. He's evaluating compatibility. Every hour he spends is an investment, and investments require return. He doesn't waste time on people who don't respect it, and he doesn't apologize for having a full life. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect. The moment a man starts overextending himself for attention, responding to every text in seconds, agreeing to every last-minute plan, or pausing his routine just to be seen, he unconsciously lowers his value, not because he's unworthy, but because he's signaling that his life is open to interruption at any time. And women pay attention to that. A high-value woman doesn't want a man who drops everything for her. She wants a man who maintains his structure and allows her to be part of it when it aligns. A woman wants to feel chosen, not chased. And a man who gives his time sparingly, who remains grounded in his priorities even when he's attracted to her, makes her feel that his attention is not a reaction. It's a conscious decision. Time is power. It's your most limited resource. And how you spend it reflects what you truly value. If your calendar is full of distractions, meaningless conversations, and people who drain your energy, then don't be surprised when the quality of your relationships mirrors that. A high-value man treats his time the same way a king guards his throne, with discretion. He doesn't open his world to anyone who simply asks. He watches, he evaluates, and then he invites. That's how value is communicated. Not with words, but with the deliberate way he moves through life and manages his time like it's sacred. Fourth boundary, purpose first, always. When a man truly embodies the mindset of purpose first, always, everything about him shifts. His energy becomes focused. His presence becomes intentional. His decisions no longer orbit around instant gratification, validation, or anyone else's emotional tides. He operates from a place of inner alignment that's unshakable because he knows who he is and why he's here. And in that space, no woman becomes the center of his world because his mission already holds that position. That doesn't mean he doesn't value love or connection. It means he refuses to sacrifice his direction for momentary attention. He doesn't stop building because someone is demanding his time. He doesn't pause his progress because she's emotionally unavailable, uncertain, or playing games. His path comes first. His ambition is not something he negotiates. And a woman who sees that will either rise to meet him or remove herself. Either way, he keeps moving. A man who lives by purpose doesn't get lost in the whirlwind of emotional highs and lows. He doesn't chase every attractive face because his attention is already married to something greater, his vision. And that kind of man, the one who places mission over moment, becomes deeply attractive to high-value women. Not because he's distant or cold, but because he's rare. Most men abandon their purpose at the first sign of emotional chaos. They skip gym sessions for late-night calls. They stop chasing excellence and start chasing affection. They forget who they are in an attempt to become who she wants. But a woman doesn't fall for the man who chases her. She falls for the man who chases his purpose so relentlessly that she feels honored just to be invited along for the journey. That's the man she respects, the one she watches in quiet admiration because he doesn't need her to validate him. His mission already does. Putting purpose first doesn't mean rejecting women. It means knowing that the right woman will never ask you to dim your fire to keep her warm. She will watch how serious you are about your craft, your goals, your vision, and that will either inspire her to meet you at your level or reveal that she was never meant to walk beside you. Purpose is the filter that exposes who aligns with your life and who doesn't. And the man who leads with purpose doesn't cry over misalignment. He's too busy becoming the man he's destined to be. He values depth over distraction, growth over games, legacy over lust, his time, his energy, his discipline. All of it is shaped by the life he's building, not the comfort he's craving in the moment. When you live from purpose, everything changes. You stop needing to convince anyone of your worth because your consistency speaks for you. You stop giving energy to things that don't grow you. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your path. And as your focus sharpens, so does your energy. You become less accessible, more intentional, more magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because there's something undeniably powerful about a man who knows exactly what he's here to do and refuses to be moved by anything that doesn't honor that mission. Fifth boundary, zero chase energy. Zero chase energy is not about arrogance, and it's definitely not about indifference. It's about rooted confidence. A man who embodies zero chase energy doesn't beg, doesn't pursue in desperation, and doesn't fall into the trap of seeking validation from a woman who hasn't shown consistent interest. He knows that when he chases, he places himself beneath. He places himself in a position where he is trying to earn something rather than attract what naturally aligns with who he is. That energy alone speaks volumes, because a high-value man doesn't chase, he attracts. He creates a life so full, so focused, so powerful that the right energy gravitates toward him. He understands that compatibility cannot be forced, and he has no interest in manipulating or performing just to gain someone's affection. His identity is not shaped by how many women want him. It's shaped by how solid he is when none of them validate him. The chase is a pattern of pursuit that comes from lack. It's rooted in the fear of not being enough, the anxiety of being alone, the belief that if he doesn't keep proving his worth, she'll lose interest. But that's not masculine strength. That's emotional insecurity in disguise. A man with zero chase energy has outgrown that. He knows he is the prize, not because he's perfect, but because he's deeply aligned. He doesn't send good morning texts to women who ghosted him the night before. He doesn't double text. He doesn't follow up on mixed signals. He doesn't romanticize hot and cold behavior. He's not interested in women who make him feel like he has to earn love by jumping through hoops. The moment energy becomes inconsistent, he doesn't question himself. He withdraws his presence silently, powerfully, with complete self-respect. And it's that silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. When a man doesn't chase, he forces the woman to evaluate her own energy. He doesn't give her the thrill of knowing she can pull him back in with breadcrumbs. He doesn't reward confusion with effort. He gives space, real, unapologetic space, not as a strategy, but as a standard. If she wants access to him, it must come through clarity, consistency, and real value. And if she doesn't bring that, he doesn't punish her. He simply doesn't invest, because he's too focused on his mission to entertain distractions dressed as romance. Zero chase energy doesn't mean you're emotionally shut off. It means your emotions are guided by principles, not desperation. It means you're not moved by temporary attention. You're only moved by genuine connection that aligns with your vision and peace. You don't seek validation from someone's body, someone's mood, or someone's interest level. You already validate yourself by the way you show up in the world. And because of that, you become the man she respects. The one who doesn't need her, but would still value her if she proves she can stand beside a man who's already complete without her. Sixth boundary, clear standards, silent enforcement, clear standards, silent enforcement. This is the mark of a man who doesn't just talk about what he expects, but lives it without needing to repeat himself. He's not trying to convince anyone to treat him right. He's not engaged in endless conversations about boundaries trying to make someone understand his worth. His actions speak louder than his voice ever could. A man like this isn't emotional about people crossing the line because he already made the line visible, and the consequence for crossing it is his absence. There's no yelling, no pleading, no drawn-out lectures. When something disrespects his values, violates his peace, or disrespects his time, he doesn't argue. He simply exits. And in that exit, he teaches the lesson that no amount of chemistry, attraction, or history can outweigh the importance of self-respect. What separates a high-value man from the rest is not how loudly he declares his standards, but how consistently he enforces them without losing composure. He doesn't flinch when a woman tests him. He doesn't fold under emotional pressure. He doesn't soften his boundaries to keep someone close. His standards are not seasonal, they are constant. And because he doesn't chase, explain, or negotiate, the people around him learn very quickly. This is a man who means what he says, even when he says very little. That silence becomes the most powerful form of communication. When she tries to push, manipulate, or test his reaction, and all she receives is distance, she learns that he doesn't operate in chaos. He lives in clarity. You don't have to be aggressive to be firm. You don't have to demand respect. You just have to stop entertaining disrespect. And a man who silently enforces his standards doesn't wait for someone to fully violate them before he acts. He notices patterns, he sees the early signs, and instead of explaining how to treat him, he simply moves differently. His shift in energy, his withdrawal of presence, his change in tone, that becomes the signal. And the people who get it will adjust. The ones who don't will remove themselves. Either outcome serves him because he's not here to keep people around. He's here to build a life that reflects his values. This kind of man isn't trying to control anyone. He's not asking anyone to become someone they're not. He's just letting them show who they are and making decisions based on that. He's not emotionally invested in changing people. He's emotionally committed to protecting his peace. He doesn't announce his expectations every week. He doesn't circle back to the same boundary multiple times. Once it's made clear, he moves accordingly. And when someone sees a man willing to walk away rather than bend without causing a scene, without saying a word, they start to understand that his boundaries aren't suggestions. They're non-negotiable terms of access. That's how respect is built. Not through explanations, but through execution. Not through noise, but through unwavering consistency in how he lives, chooses, and removes himself from what doesn't align. If you want to attract a high value woman, stop focusing on chasing her and start becoming the man who doesn't need to. Your boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are filters to let the right ones in. When you live with purpose, protect your time, master your emotions, and enforce your standards without apology, you stop being one of many and become one of a kind. The world may try to test your patience, but a high-value woman will only ever respect your power. And that power doesn't come from how loud you speak, but from how deeply you're rooted.